So you want to start a D&D campaign. Cool. First, wrangle 5 different schedules together. Next, emotionally prepare to throw out half your notes when the players befriend a random villager and derail everything. Quest Giver's Guide here, and in this video, I'm going to give my tips for everything I do before I sit down at the table for session 1. Technically, the very first thing you need is a direction for your story and world, but I'm not going to dive too deep into that right now. We'd probably be here all day. But if you want a more in-depth video on this, let me know. The most important thing is this: pick something that you as the DM are actually excited to run. If you lose interest, your table will feel it. Whether that means homebrewing your own story and world, or picking one of the pre-made modules. That's totally up to you. But with that out of the way, let's go into the first real thing that you need to do before session 1. Quick disclaimer, don't maim me in the comments. I know this isn't everything that you need to do before starting session 1. These are just a few of my tips that I wish I knew before starting my first couple of campaigns. That said, drop a comment below for things that you like to do before session 1. The first thing I do after settling on a direction for the story is, who am I going to play with? Seriously, I have no friends. But that never stopped me before, so pick how many people you want at the table. Your player count should be based on your experience as the DM and what kind of campaign you're running. If you're aiming for a roleplay heavy campaign, too many people at the table might not give everyone a chance to speak. For me, I typically run RP heavy campaigns, so I found the sweet spot to be about 4 or 5. But this can vary depending on a lot of different factors. Now this is where it starts to get tricky, and the reason for that? Scheduling. This is where most campaigns go to die. To help this, make sure everyone can meet on a consistent cadence, whether that's weekly, bi-weekly, or even monthly. In my personal experience, I realize when cadence breaks down, motivation usually follows. Next, think about the vibe that you want at your table. This can be especially important if you're playing with people that you don't already know, like a group from the local game store. My best advice is simple: be upfront. Let them know what kind of game you're running. Is it going to be roleplay heavy? Is it going to be dungeon crawl? Or is it going to be somewhere in between? Oh, sorry, am I interrupting something? Is that thing on? Anyways, just came down from the local game store, didn't really know the vibe, so just tried to do my best. The last thing to consider is experience. Do you want veterans? Do you want new players? Or do you want a mix of both? All of those work, but personally I like a mix of both. It keeps the game moving because the experienced players help the newer ones, plus I think the game is best learned this way. I also genuinely enjoy teaching new players. It's one of my favorite parts of DMing. And now that you have your table picked, we lead into one of the most crucial parts of the whole process. You're locked in, and now you have to corral everybody for session 0, which is already an achievement in itself. If you're new to DMing, here's the quick version. Session 0 is a place to lay everything out. It's a time for the DM to share information, expectations, questions, concerns, and just as importantly, a time for the players to do the same. Because we don't want anybody getting emotionally attached to the wrong idea here. I usually try to do this a good bit before the campaign actually starts, and I'll explain why in a minute, but for now, here are the things that I like to cover during my session 0s. First, expectations and logistics. This is easily the most important part and will save you a ton of headaches down the road. And not the kind that you can cure with the pills. I'll go over what I expect from the players. Things like attendance, engagement, roleplay, and backstories. And just as important, I tell them what they can expect from me, the DM. Things like how I plan to run the game or what kind of experience I'm aiming for. I'll also ask the players what they want and expect, because it's much better to learn that now than halfway through the campaign. Second, the tone of the game. Is it dark fantasy? Is it lighthearted and goofy? Or is it somewhere in between? Because nothing derails a session faster than one player showing up for grim dark tragedy and the other one doing comedy bits.
The shadows cling to my soul. I feel I'll never escape my past.
That's what she said. It was fine. Everything was fine. And thirdly, character creation parameters. This one's pretty straightforward. I'll cover any restrictions, house guidelines, allowed sources, and any backstory information they may need before starting to build their characters, because we don't want to create problems for future us. And finally, house rules. If you're using homebrew rules, optional rules, rules from different editions, talk about it here. No surprises later. Surprises are meant for plot twist, not rule debates. Now, I'm not saying that session 0 is required, but there is a very noticeable difference between campaigns that I run and have a session 0 and campaigns that I ran and didn't have a session 0. And my stress is usually a part of that difference. And as for when you run session 0, well, that's really dependent on your campaign. For longer campaigns, 2, 3+ years, I try to run it months ahead of time. That gives the players enough time to make their characters, and also gives me enough time to weave their backstories into the world, especially since I run fully homebrewed campaigns. And like most of us, everybody's schedules are hectic, and I don't want anybody to feel rushed, or apologizing for being late before we've even started. For shorter campaigns, you can absolutely compress this. I've done session 0 a week or two before the game for campaigns that only last 6 to 8 sessions. You can also just wing it and hope for the best. But I've already beat this dead horse enough, so with that covered, let's move on. Let's talk about character creation. Now, how involved you are in this part will depend on how experienced your players are. But with session 0 out of the way, your players should have everything they need to start building their characters. By this point, you should have a solid direction for your story, and probably some major plot beats sketched out. That being said, this is a great time to keep refining those ideas while still helping your players, especially if they're newer, build out their characters. This is where a lot of good questions come up, and where a lot of future issues get quietly avoided. Once your players have sent over their characters and their backstories, now you can finish your part. Now, how intense this part is depends on entirely what you talked about in session 0. If your campaigns are heavily backstory driven, this can be a heavy lift as you polish the story and weave everybody's backstories in. But if everyone's keeping things more surface level or even skipping backstories completely, which is totally cool and a lot of fun, this might be just simply plugging in a few connections. Hey guys, my name's Phil. I'm a wizard, clearly. I like hot Cheetos. What am I doing here again? Either way, the goal here isn't perfection. It's just making sure the characters feel like they belong in the world without overworking yourself before things even get started. With that covered, let's close things out with a few tips for final prep before session 1. At this point, you've handled the big stuff, and now you're just polishing. Tying in backstories, filling out plot beats, sketching encounters, etc. If you're newer to DMing, this can feel a little overwhelming at first, but I promise you it's not as bad as it looks. My final tip is simple: have fun with it. Things are going to change once the game starts, and that's totally normal. Your players are going to surprise you, your plans are going to shift, and that's not failure, that's just the game working. And just because these steps have helped me run successful campaigns, it doesn't mean that they're the only way to do it. Take what works, leave what doesn't, and mold it into something that works for your table. If everybody's having fun, including you, you're doing it right. Thanks for watching, and if you want to help me out, go ahead and click the like and subscribe button. Peace.
Phil, what are you still doing here? Get out of my house.